of climate change, cultural, environmental, and historical preservation that allows us to tell the story of Lake Mead accurately and responsibly is essential as we prepare for the park's future. Now, these goals of preservation and sharing the story of Lake Mead cannot be done without all of your support in cultural, historical, and lived experiences. The Sustainable Low Water Action Plan is certainly quite a mouthful, so we'll just refer to it as the plan from here on out. So this plan is in response to the unprecedented drought we've all had front row seats to over the past 22 years, and the impacts the region's changing climate, most notably the Colorado River, has had on the resources, operations, services, management strategies, and recreational opportunities at Lake Mead. Over the course of the last 22 years, the National Park Service has spent more than $50 million on infrastructure improvements to execute previous planning efforts that focused mainly on launch ramps for motorized recreational boating to continue to access Lake Mead as the water levels continued to drop. These previous planning efforts, however, did not anticipate the current rapid rate at which water levels continue to decline, which have outpaced construction efforts and funding availability. The current rapid decline of lake levels has been compounded by environmental factors such as winters with minimal snowpack, hotter summers, and drier soil that absorbs rainfall. These environmental factors have resulted in less runoff and ultimately less water in Lake Mead. As the park followed the Bureau of Reclamation's water level projections for Lake Mead as well as Lake Powell over the last few years, it has become very evident that the park's 2018 environmental assessment and low water planning effort would do nothing more than continue to chase the water. As a result, park staff and our Denver Service Center colleagues have been hard at work behind the scenes over the past 2 years to update our strategic direction and to create a more sustainable and responsible future for motorized boater access and related commercial services at 5 key park locations. This current plan explores a range of new strategic management and operational concepts within the scope of available funding and wise use of limited fiscal resources, safety and operational assessments, cost-benefit assessment for long-term infrastructure needs, and the plausibility of continued drought and rapidly declining lake levels into the next several years. Regardless of the long-range strategic direction the park takes, the NPS will continue to promote other water and land-based recreation in the park that supports operational, environmental, educational, and equitable goals. Which brings us to today. By sharing your ideas and opinions about how the park should approach low water access management, you will be able to help us shape the future. Denver Service Center staff and Lake Mead's Cultural Resource Manager, Chris Nice, who you all have met now, will go through the plan with you in greater detail, discuss how to provide formal comments on the EEA, and open it up for a brief Q&A at the end. With that, I'll turn things back over to Rose to keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. I'm going to pass things over to Wes, who's going to give us a little intro on Teams and how it's working. While we do that transition and move to the next slide, we did want to let you all know that we are recording this, and we'll stop the recording before the Q&A starts. And that's the purpose of our recording, is so that we can make this available to others so that they can see if they weren't able to join today. So just wanted to let everybody know that's happening. Wes?
Thank you for that note, Rose. We now want to go over a few pieces related to Teams platform for those of you who might not be aware of how this works. So Teams allows meeting participants to engage with the meeting in multiple ways. The far left icon shown as two silhouettes of people, allows you to see a list of everyone who's in the meeting. The icon next to it, showing a speech bubble, pulls up the chat. Clicking on this will allow you to enter comments into the meeting chat. These comments will be viewable by everyone in the meeting. Next to that is an icon showing a hand and a smiley face. You can click on this hand to raise your hand if you have a question or comment, or if you wish to react to something that has been said. Finally, you can turn your camera on or off by clicking on the icon that shows the camera graphic. You can also turn your audio on or off by clicking on the icon that shows the microphone graphic. We ask that you please keep your audio off unless you are asking a question or making a comment. Next slide, please. In addition to the functionality that I discussed on the previous slide, the Teams platform also allows meeting participants to set up additional controls for themselves. By clicking on the ellipsis or three dots icon, you will be able to select multiple options, including turning on the captioning if you would like, or by making things into a full screen if it's difficult for you to see the different images of those of us with our cameras on. Next slide, please. As mentioned, we are also offering a separate captioning service solely for this meeting. The link to that has been placed in the chat, and you can click on that link if you are interested in having the captioning for the meeting. If your computer audio is not working and you would like to receive captioning over the phone, please mute your computer and dial the number on this slide. That number is 1-202-640-1187. You will then be prompted to enter a passcode. That passcode is 587-396-867 and the pound sign. And I noticed that the link for the captioning has not yet been dropped into the chat, so we will get on that right now. Next slide, please. So to talk about group agreements and to talk more about just the plan as a whole, I will turn it back to my colleague, Rose Verbis.
Thanks, Wes. And the link for captioning is now in the chat. Please do reach out if you're having any difficulty with that, or if you need the call-in number dropped in again, please let us know. So we just wanted to put a few expectations out there. This is by joining this meeting, we're hoping to just have a really productive and effective conversation. So we know y'all will agree that having some group agreements can be helpful to guide that conversation. We're hoping that y'all will participate fully. You've already started to do that by introducing yourselves, coming off of mute, using some of the functionality of Teams. We are welcoming all voices and perspectives. They are needed in this very complex process that we're going through. We hope everyone is here to listen, to learn, being inquisitive and asking questions to better understand those different perspectives. Our goal is to do no harm. We encourage you to share your unique ideas honestly and respectfully, and assume good intent of the other speakers, as we will all assume good intent of you as well. And this is a space where you can feel confident sharing. We welcome ideas and we welcome feedback. We know that there's a lot going on in this planning process. Justin did a great job introducing the topic and how things have changed in such an unprecedented way over the last few years. So it is okay to be upset, angry, uncomfortable, but we do want this to be a civil conversation. And so we really appreciate everybody committing to these group agreements with us. We can move to the next slide. In the presentation, we're going to go through introduction of the park, touch on some of the foundational elements that are park-wide, talk about the planning process, and then get into the management actions. And we will go through your role and how you can contribute to official public comment. Next slide. You already met all of us. These are the presenters for today, and a little breakout of where everybody's from. If you're not familiar with the Denver Service Center, I did want to just say a quick few sentences about the Denver Service Center. Wes and Isabel and I work in the planning division. And if you're not familiar with who we are, we're a centralized office that provides planning services across the agency. We get the opportunity to share best practices and shared experiences from other parks to this project and help expand the park's planning capacity. Our interdisciplinary teams are composed of facilities specialists, natural and cultural resource specialists, experts, visitor use, and socio-econ specialists. And we work on a variety of plan types. We're helping Lake Mead. We also work on site designs, resource stewardship strategies, river management plans. And if you're tracking what's been happening across the agency, we work on a lot of visitor use management plans these days. So that's it. Next slide. And I'm turning things over to Chris.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you again, all for being here. We're initially just going to go over a little park introduction. And next slide. So the purpose of Lake Mead when the park was created was to provide diverse public recreation, benefit, and use on Lakes Mead and Mojave and surrounding lands in a manner that preserves ecological, geological, cultural, historic, scenic, scientific, and wilderness resources of the park. Next slide. As members of the tribal nations who occupied these lands since time immemorial, you are very well aware of all the resources that we have available in the park. And these are some of the fundamental resources and values that we hold near and dear to us. Obviously, we have the water and recreation use, but we do value our native species of all sorts, plant, animal, water, and land base, and of course our cultural landscapes and historic structures, our archaeological resources, our river and ecosystem resources as well. And next slide. And I believe, am I turning it back to you, Rose, for the planning?
Yep, a few slides on the planning process. We can go to the next one. We're going to talk a little bit about the purpose and need for the plan. And so while we're transitioning that, for those of you who have been around for a while, that you know that there was a 2019 plan and EA that was completed. And the purpose of this one is to develop an updated strategic direction for the future of motorized boat launching, related commercial services, facility and infrastructure needs, and related implementation actions at those 5 priority locations. We are centering public engagement and tribal government consultation as essential to this process, and it'll occur throughout. So this isn't the last time that you'll have the opportunity to contribute. The plan is needed to fill urgent and high priority needs to make critical decisions to inform voting, provide updated direction for natural and cultural resource programs at the park, identify opportunities for non-motorized and water-based access, as well as evaluate potential site closures and consultation and consolidation of concessions operations. We can go to the next slide. We did want to talk a little bit about the relationship of this planning effort to the previous plans. This was mentioned in the welcome and introduction that there has been an unprecedented and very unexpected rapid decline of lake levels. The potential implications for Lake Mead includes the infrastructure, operations, concessions, and visitor experiences for motorized and non-motorized, all recreation types. There's a need for lower cost, more feasible alternatives to address the need for prioritizing investments based on funding levels and investment sustainability. There's 5 priority locations, and on the next slide, we'll just highlight those for a moment. And also needed to reflect on the fiscal realities related to operating, completing marina relocations, boat launches, visitor facilities, and necessary utilities and infrastructure extensions. On the next slide, you'll see the 5 locations and just a quick photo if you haven't been there or just need to jog your memory a little bit. These are the 5 locations that are included in the Sustainable Flow Water Access Plan in EA. It's Hemenway Harbor, Echo Bay, Temple Bar, Callville Bay, and South Cove. On the next slide, there's an overview of the planning time horizon. Those of you who have been involved and commented on other plans will notice this is a very rapid timeline to meet the very urgent needs. So right now we're hosting public scoping. You all are participating in that by being at this meeting today. In the winter, after we wrap up public scoping, Pepsi will close on December 23rd. We'll begin to analyze public comments, and the planning team will continue to prepare the Sustainable Low Water Access Plan and EA. There will be another opportunity for public review of the compiled plan and EA that will occur in the spring. You'll receive notice of that as well. And the intent is to prepare a decision document by late spring, early summer of 2023. With that, I'm going to turn things back to Chris.
Thank you, Rose. And now we'll talk a little bit about desired conditions. And next slide, please. So desired conditions are, they outline the vision for resource conditions, visitor experience, and opportunities and facilities and services that the park strives to achieve and maintain in a particular area. Next slide. So in the visitor experience, our desired conditions will have visitors will have the opportunity for non-motorized, water-based recreational experiences that are safe and enjoyable, access to consistent, clear, and effective messaging to understand the why and how of Lake Mead decision-making, and access to up-to-date park information detailing available services and opportunities for effective trip planning decisions. And on the right, you'll see the map showing the locations of the 5 locations that we're discussing today. Next slide, please. So for natural resources, we will enhance from infrastructure changes in targeted areas to preserve water quality and aquatic habitats that support aquatic ecosystems, and protect and preserve while balancing and sustaining recreational enjoyment and exploration, including landscapes around the shorelines. Next slide. Cultural resources we will protect and preserve where practicable and possible, while balancing and sustaining recreational enjoyment and exploration, including landscape around the shorelines, and evaluate for preservation or rehabilitation, including historic districts or landscapes that provide interpretive and educational value. Next slide. So for facilities and infrastructure will be supported by a variety of reliable services at key locations to benefit visitors and park operators, sustainably design, feasibly maintain, and sustainably manage and size to address visitor needs. And our goal is to improve efficiency at these locations as well. Next slide. And Rose, are we going back to you?
Okay. Yep, you got it. So we're going to go through the management concepts and actions. These are meant to be representative of the information that's contained in the newsletter, so not all the details are contained in these slides, but the newsletter does contain all the details. So we can move to the next slide. There are 3 preliminary management concepts that the park is considering. We are considering them to be a range of concepts. They're all subject to available funding, financial viability, safety and operational assessments, as well as technological capabilities to implement the actions. The concepts include water levels of varying elevations at key locations, which are influenced by shoreline topography and bathymetry. Current management is concept 1 and describes the current area management in NEPA terminology that's often referred to as the no action. And concepts 2 and 3 explore approaches to managing motorized boat launching and commercial services based on differing funding levels, and again, a range of scenarios under which water levels might vary. I can go to the next slide. We wanted to talk a little bit about the common to all location concepts. These are actions that, regardless of which concept was selected or which action within the concepts was selected, these are actions that the park would consider. So that includes evaluating the financial viability of concessionaire managed launch ramps within the operations of 22 to 75-foot boat size limits, which is currently included in the superintendent's compendium. Park would consider using temporary and flexible materials if the water levels are rising to support recreation and motorized access. conducting cultural resource surveys, terrestrial archaeological surveys of new areas, and submerged resource surveys. Support new and existing land and water-based sustainable recreation opportunities. Those activities include things like kayaking, paddleboarding, biking, hiking, swimming, camping. Next slide is a continuation of some of the common to all actions. We would continue to communicate with the public and stakeholders frequently regarding available services and any operational changes. Evaluate and develop possible reservation options for launching and retrieving boats. Consider combining with vessel permits and timed entry. This is an adaptive management action. For those that might not be familiar with adaptive management, it's an option that would be evaluated under the planning and compliance process, but the park would only take if necessary and needed in the future, so not automatically upon implementation of the plan. And then we'd also identify indicators, thresholds, capacities to ensure desired conditions are being maintained and achieved. So in the next few slides, we're going to walk through the actions that are specific to each of these locations. Again, this is a version of the table that appears in the newsletter, and we'd encourage you, there's a few more rows that wouldn't fit on the slide, to take a look. These are the major categories: the launch ramps and marinas, concession services, facilities and infrastructure. You can see the way the table is laid out is that current management concept is in the column after the labels, and then concept 2 and concept 3. Where the actions repeat themselves, we've added same as current management concepts, so you can refer back to concept 1. At Hemenway, the current management concept would be to extend to an elevation of approximately 1,000 feet. The current launch ramp and marina relocate when water levels are below 1,000, and above 1,000, evaluate the existing launch ramp location for reopening. Concept 2 is the same as concept 1 for launch ramps and marinas. And under concept 3, we'll consider no future concrete ramp extensions or relocations will be made, and would need to evaluate motorized vessel access for safe and operational feasibility. Related to concession services, maintain concession operations to match lake levels under current management concept 1, same for concept 2, and no services under concept 3, closing the related facilities, infrastructure, and everything related to the marine operations. Facilities and infrastructure for current management concept 1 at Hemenway would be to maintain the parking lot and continue to support facilities associated with the marina. Concept 2 is similar and would evaluate abandoned infrastructure for operational and financial feasibility and safety to remove where appropriate, and to cease maintaining structures that are unsafe and no longer necessary. And then concept 3 would, infrastructure would remain until funding is available for its removal. So that's the concepts for Hemenway. We can move to the next slide, and just want to let y'all know that during the Q&A, we can come back to these slides if you have specific questions about some of these actions. At Echo Bay, launch ramps and marinas under concept 1 would maintain launch ramp closure. Concept 2 would relocate to approximately 1,000 feet, and concept 3 would be no future launch ramp extensions or relocations. Concession services under concept 1 to maintain concessions amendment to operate land, fuel, retail, recreational vehicle, and trailer village with no on-water operations. And under concept 2, discontinue concessions below approximately 1,000 feet, close the trailer village and comfort station and related wastewater treatment. Buildings in this area are not viable for repurposing, and opportunities would be considered and evaluated if water levels rise beyond approximately 1,000 feet. Under concept 3, no amenities or services would be provided, and the trailer village would be closed, and comfort station and related wastewater treatment. Facilities and infrastructure, there's nothing to note under concept 1. Concept 2, below 1,000 feet would maintain the primitive campground, including RV sites without potable water. The park would also evaluate abandoned infrastructure for operational and financial feasibility and safety, and remove where appropriate, as well as evaluate historic structures that are unsafe and no longer needed and are a part of the historic district. And under concept 3, Infrastructure would remain until funding is available for removal. Go to the next slide. At Callville Bay, the launch ramp and marinas, we would maintain the closure of the existing launch ramp under the current management when water levels are at or below approximately 1065 feet. The concessionaire maintains the temporary launch ramp currently, and then also test and evaluate the portable launch ramp maintained by the concessionaire. Concept 2 would include relocating the launch ramp to extend to 950 as funding allows, close the ramp below 950 and reopen above approximately 1065. So you can see these lake levels are fluctuating at each location with some different actions associated with them depending on what's possible for that location. Also test and evaluate the portable launch ramp maintained by the concessionaire. And concept 3, like the others, is no future NPS launch ramp extensions or relocations. Test and evaluate the portable launch ramp maintained by the concessionaire. Concession services under concept 1 at Callville Bay would be to maintain full concession services. Concept 2 is a discontinuation. The result of that is closing the marina, ending a concessions contract, closing the trailer village, restaurant, boat shop, comfort stations, and other infrastructure, as well as the infrastructure being removed. Opportunities for commercial services will be considered and evaluated above approximately 1065 feet. Under concept 3, no amenities or services provided and discontinue concession services. Facilities and infrastructure under current management concept 1, complete the design of all supporting infrastructure. And then under concept 2, facilities will be evaluated and removed if unsafe and operationally infeasible for motorized use. Once potable water can no longer be maintained with current infrastructure, remove the concessions, infrastructure, employee housing, and other NPS facilities. Reevaluate the longevity of overnight use given the lack of potable water, and evaluate abandoned infrastructure for operational and financial feasibility and safety, and remove where appropriate. And then concept 3 under facilities and infrastructure is to remain, infrastructure would remain in place until funding is available for removal, and reevaluate the longevity of overnight use given the lack of potable water. Thank you, Chris, for the note in the chat. It's an evolving situation at Lake Mead, and I anticipate we'll need to update these lake levels a few more times. So thanks for that note. At South Cove, the launch ramp and marina support launch access as topography allows below approximately 1035, prohibit new launch ramps and launch access above, and open the concrete ramp that will be above 1070. Concept 2 at South Cove is the same, similar as 1 for the launch ramp and marina, and then concept 3 is no future extensions or relocations. Concession services at South Cove, no amenities or services are provided under current management. Concept 2 and 3 are both the same. And for facilities and infrastructure, there's no new roads that would be constructed. And concept 2 is the same. And we would evaluate abandoned infrastructure for operational and financial feasibility and safety, and remove where appropriate. And then concept 3 is the same as current management. Final location, Temple Bar, launch ramp, and marina. Concept 1 would maintain the closure of the existing NPS launch ramp, test and evaluate the portable launch ramp maintained by the concessionaire. Concept 2, close the marina and launch ramp above approximately 1070 and open the boat launch to motorized access at the existing location, as well as testing and evaluating the portable launch ramp maintained by the concessionaire. Concept 3, no future launch ramp extensions or relocations, NPS maintained. Test and evaluate the portable launch ramp maintained by the concessionaire. And then concession services, concept 1 would maintain current concessions. Under concept 2, it would be discontinued and the resulting infrastructure would be closed as well. And concept 3 is no amenities or services provided. For facilities and infrastructure, under concept 1, maintain NPS campground operations, including land and water fuel stations and the RV and trailer village. Concept 2, manage fuel for admin, operational, and emergency use. Reevaluate the longevity and viability of overnight use given the lack of potable water, and evaluate abandoned infrastructure for operational and financial feasibility and safety and remove where appropriate. And under concept 2, the infrastructure would remain until funding is available for removal. I know that was a lot of information. We can go to the next slide and we're going to transition into the segment where Wes is going to tell you about how you can get involved, what your role is in this process, and after that we're going to get into a bit of Q&A. Wes?
Thank you, Rose. So we want to hear from you, and we want to hear from you in any way that makes the most sense to you. The comment period for this plan is officially through December 23rd, 2022, and there are two primary ways that you can share your comments with the team. The first is through the project homepage at the link on this slide. We will send the link to the project homepage in the chat moving forward. At that site, you will find information on our public meetings, how to comment on the plan, and opportunities to learn more about the plan through additional materials. The second way to provide comments is by mailing your hard copy comments to the address shown on the screen. That is Lake Mead National Recreation Area, Attention Superintendent's Office, 601 Nevada Way, Boulder City, Nevada, 89005. If you have any questions about this comment period or about submitting a comment, please feel free to email the address shown, lakepublicaffairs@nps.gov. Next slide, please. So if you do click over to that website, you'll notice that you'll be able to see the screen as shown on this slide here. You'll want to click on the link on the left side of the page that reads Open for Comment. And if you look at this slide, you can see that circled. And if you just click on that link, you will then be ported to this next slide here, which will then allow you to really see an additional document open for comment. And that slide will then, or this link will then allow you to click on the Lake Mead NRA Sustainable Low Water Access Plan EA newsletter, and that's towards the bottom of that page. And if you click on that link, next slide, please. You'll be taken, if you click on that link on the previous slide, you'll be taken to this page that includes the questions that we are seeking your input on, a copy of the newsletter for the plan, and you can also provide your answers to the questions by clicking on the Comment Now box in the center of the page. In addition to being shown on that page, these questions will be discussed on the next several slides that we'll be going through here today. So you'll be able to hear from them on this presentation, but then you'll also have them for your reference on that website if you want to take your time to really mull them over and think about them in the days ahead. So for now, we will get through them on the slide. And for that conversation, I will turn it back over to my colleague, Rose Rubis.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes. Thanks for walking us through that. I think right before we get into the Q&A, we have on the next slide the group agreements again as a reminder. Just so a check-in and reminder again, we want to hear from you. We want you to participate fully. We're welcoming all voices and perspectives. They are needed. Listening to learn, being inquisitive, asking questions to better understand different perspectives. Keeping everyone's best interest in mind, doing no harm, sharing your unique ideas honestly and respectfully, and assuming good intent, and then sharing the space. We welcome ideas and feedback from others. So as we transition, we know there might be concerns, and we are happy to answer some questions. The way we're going to walk through this is just a little bit of a facilitated dialogue. So we can go to the next slide.